Bumgarner with the Greater Tampa Chamber of Commerce. I want to thank our viewers for tuning in to our 2019 candidate interview series for City Council in the city of Tampa. At the Chamber, we focus on policy, not politics, and while we do not endorse candidates, we feel it's important we get them in front of the business community and our members to answer important questions on business topics. We're excited to have Viera. He's running City Council District 7 with us today. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So we're just under 6 weeks from Election Day. We're in the final stretch. What's the message that you and your campaign are trying to deliver to voters before they head to the polls?
That's a good question. You know, I've been privileged to be in Tampa City Council for the last 2 years, and I've been able to work really, really hard to try to give my district a voice. And that really means all of my district. We've been rolling up our sleeves to try to get not only projects for our districts and whatnot, but also to advocate a citywide perspective on things like fiscal responsibility, what I call Tampa values, et cetera. So I've really, really been a hard worker, I think, in the last 2 years and trying to get things done. Again, I'm proud to be a North and New Tampa City Council member, but we're also taking a vision that I believe really represents and benefits all of the city of Tampa.
Great. I want to talk a little bit about workforce housing. Some consider it a crisis. There's certainly a need for more affordable workforce housing in the city of Tampa. I'm sure you hear it in your district as well. What zoning or policy opportunities do you see to address this need?
That's a wonderful issue. That's a really, really big issue that we have. Recently in Tampa City Council, we took up what's called tiny houses. We can certainly, I, as a general principle, without commenting on any particular project that may be before me, as a principle, I support that, looking at different innovative solutions to housing. Obviously, we've taken a look at waiving parking minimums, particularly for the downtown area. That's another thing that we can obviously do. And then continue to encourage private-public partnerships in terms of supporting developments, et cetera, and continuing to foster relationships as a city councilman with the county, with the state of Florida, with the federal government, so that those dollars continue to come in and support our working families. So we can do things with budgetary allowances. We can do things through zoning. There's a wide array of answers that we can have for that.
Great. You mentioned the budget. I want to stick on that for a second. One could argue that the budget process is one of the biggest responsibilities for City Council and working with the mayor.
Yes.
We're hearing from state economists and budget leaders that there could be a downturn in the economy in a couple of years. If reelected, that would be under your term. How would you balance that? How would you address a potential downturn in the economy with the budget? Where would you see potentials for cuts? Would there be tax increases? How would you manage that?
That's a very good point. You know, tax increases have got to be a last resort for us. We raised the millage rate, and I voted for that in 2017. It was. We recently raised the sales tax $0.015. Just before I got on, we raised the stormwater tax. So while millage increases are technically on the table, they have to be a last resort. You mentioned potentially a downturn in the economy. The economy is doing very, very well right now. We've got unemployment nationally at around just about the 4% record growth. But we know that's not going to last forever. We know that there are ups and downs in the economy. We could very well see it down. So we have to factor that in. But this is the bad thing is, and I try to be a realist, even with a good economy, we're still facing a major problem in the city of Tampa. We've got significant debt to pay off from Big Blue over 25 years ago in Ybor City. We're going to be looking at the loss of CIT money in 2027. So and additionally, some of our costs continue to rise. Healthcare costs in the last 8 years for city employees have gone up from $40 to $80 million, doubled in size, just like it has for all major institutions. We're not unique in that regard. So certainly we have to take a look at fiscal restraint while we want to meet the needs of our city and our neighborhoods. We also have to be mindful of that looming crisis. We have the looming, that's the problem is we have the challenges that we know of, and those challenges are significant. And then we have the challenges that we don't know about. So we really have to exercise fiscal restraint with tax increases, I believe, really being a last resort for Tampa City Council.
Thanks. Permitting. We've heard from some members and folks in the community that permitting is becoming more and more difficult. Obviously, we want to ensure a safe process in the permitting department, but also an efficient one, so our businesses and residents in the city can move on with their projects.
Mhm.
Can you talk a little bit about that and how you would potentially address the permitting issue?
Yeah, that's certainly something every administration always talks about having more efficiency in the permitting process, and then we usually have some significant movements in that regard, but the challenges still lie. Obviously, the business of one of the great businesses of local government. Sorry, had
Yep.
a. Can you see me there?
I can
I
see
had
it.
a call come in. The great purpose of local government is to encourage enterprises, to encourage business growth. And that's the way that it is. And to the extent that the permitting process continues to be burdensome, we obviously have to take a look at that issue by bringing some private sector common sense into these type of dialogues and just listening to our constituents. I mean, for example, I represent one of parts of my district is the New Tampa area. And I get a lot of complaints with regards to trees and building homes, et cetera. And even just roots going under people's homes, et cetera. And while that may not necessarily be directly a business growth, it has to do with forms of permitting and allowances by the city that citizens find very, very cumbersome. We certainly have to break through that red tape, without a doubt.
Switching gears, home rule. Local governments across the state have grown more frustrated with the Tallahassee knows best mentality, preemption. Do you agree that is the case? And if so, how would you work to build a stronger relationship, working relationship with our legislative delegation?
That's a great question. Obviously, I oppose the idea that Tallahassee always knows best. I think that on certain issues involving housing, zoning, et cetera, those are uniquely local type of issues that the city of Tampa, Hillsborough County, et cetera, should use. You talk about building relationships with people in Tallahassee. That's certainly something that I've valued in doing as a Tampa City Councilman. I'm very proud of the fact that I've been able to have town halls, for example, with 3 county commissioners, 2 Republicans and 1 Democrat from throughout my district. I've also had very good relationships with folks in Tallahassee. When it comes to these kind of issues that we deal with in the city, we cannot look at them as Republicans or Democrats. We have to look at them as people that want to move our city and our community forward. A perfect example of that is Offer Transportation, that had so much support from so many Republicans, from so many Democrats, in terms of moving this area forward. So I think that the main issue there is making sure that when it comes to our Tampa Bay legislators, whether or not they are Republican or Democrat, whether there's a blue wave or a red wave, that we have a common sense wave that allows us to be able to interact with them and to deal with them on everyday issues. It's about civility. It's also about trust, which is they've got to be able to trust me. I've got to be able to trust them. And I think that with our local officials, we tend to have that. I think we have a very collegial environment here in Tampa with our elected officials. And I'm very proud of that. I mean, you take a look at the work that, for example, we've done in helping to promote the Warrior Games. We've not just benefited from the great leadership of the Greater Tampa Chamber of Commerce, but Republicans like former State Senator Dana Young, Gus Bilirakis, Democrats like Kathy Castor, former Senator Bill Nelson, who was a big leader on that issue. So you've got to build bridges on that issue, and I think that's a good way to implement that.
You mentioned public-private partnerships earlier, and local governments are utilizing P3s as an asset and are doing so across the country. What opportunities do you see for P3s in the city of Tampa?
I didn't hear that. I'm sorry. For public-private partnerships?
Yeah.
That's, there's a lot of different things that we can look at that. For example, one of the big things that we always talk about is the homeless issue that we have here in the city of Tampa. And I think that that's certainly something where the private sector, particularly communities of faith and civic organizations, that they feed not only the stomach, but the heart. Can certainly have a really, really big role in that regard. You obviously take a look at bigger initiatives that really define the identity of Tampa, such as, for example, the Warrior Games, something that we're working on right now, including with the Greater Tampa Chamber of Commerce, getting together local governments, getting together members of Congress, county commissioners, and then many of your own members to help promote the Warrior Games. So we can take a look at issues of compassion. We can take a look at issues of identity within the city of Tampa in terms of promoting us in promoting public-private partnerships.
Great. Transportation. Obviously, in November, a transportation referendum passed, one that the chamber supported strongly, injecting a new level of dollars into transportation. And while we all have project lists of projects we'd like to see get done, my question for you is, what would be the one priority project you would like to see out of the gates as it relates to transportation?
Without a doubt, I would love to see a transit connector between USF and downtown Tampa and then to the airport. It's not just something that benefits my area, but it's something that does, excuse me, I have a cold here. It's something that does what transit-related development is supposed to do, which is to develop communities that need that development. You take a look at the University of South Florida area, an area that includes not only USF, but the VA, Moffitt, Shriners, Florida Hospital, et cetera. There's so much potential there. There's so much potential there for growth, for residential development, for commercial development. And we don't have the right kind of local government policies that give that area the respect that it deserves. I think that some sort of a transit connector, whether using tracks, True BRT, whatever it may be, would really, really benefit this area. USF needs to be on the map. It's one of the great gateways to the city of Tampa. Right next to it, you have Busch Gardens, which is the tourist gateway here to the city of Tampa, and yet it's beyond neglected and it makes no sense. So that's a transportation project that I think that would work really, really well. And that's something that I've been a strong advocate for since I was elected.
Great. Leadership, what do you see as the role of Tampa City Council? And if reelected, how do you see your role evolving over the next term?
That's a good question. You know, I think I would continue with the attitude that I've taken. I've only been on there for 2 years. And obviously your first 6 months, you're sort of, a bit more insecure. Then you kind of come into being the man or woman that you are in the public sphere. I've always been the kind of person who is resolute. I have my positions, but I'm always very civil about it. I don't disagree I don't disagree while being disagreeable. Let's put it that way. I think that you can build bridges. I think that you can continue to work with people, whoever the next mayor is, whoever he or she may be. I hope to continue to have a very good working relationship with them. I've had a very good working relationship with Mayor Buckhorn, and it's benefited our district. I want to continue to be a voice on some of the issues that I've championed on Tampa City Council, not only development of our neighborhoods, but also, championing the respect for our veterans. We have 98,000 veterans here in the city of Tampa, or strike that, in Hillsborough County, something that I think we're all very, very proud of. And I want to continue to be a voice for something that's very close to my heart because of my brother who has special needs, which is the mayor's sensory friendly and autism program here for the city of Tampa. We got to make sure that whoever the next mayor is doesn't forget about that. I would love to see that expanded to people with Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, and different kinds of special needs to continue to be that voice of compassion. But if reelected, I would continue to be a bridge builder on Tampa City Council, not only with my own colleagues, I believe all of with whom I get along well, but with the business community, between Republicans, Democrats, et cetera, because just to be blunt, in this day and age in our politics, we need more bridge building. And I think that I'm the kind of individual who has championed that throughout his public life.
Great. So we've touched on several important policy topics. Is there something that we didn't discuss that's a priority of your campaign, or is there something you'd like to reemphasize as a priority?
Without a doubt, I think that we have to continue to get back to taking a look at our neighborhoods and the needs of our neighborhoods. While downtown, it would behoove me in my first race to have demonized downtown development, and I never did that because I think that any 21st century city needs a viable residential downtown. We're working towards that, but we need to concurrently take a look at the needs of our neighborhoods. This is a very special time here in the city of Tampa. We're looking at having a transit connector potentially between Orlando and downtown Tampa. We have obviously up to $300 million a year in county funding through All for Transportation, prospectively coming our way, including about $130 million coming to Hart. We still got to keep hope alive for the Rays here in Tampa and Ybor City or somewhere here, and I'm certainly one to keep hope alive there. But we've got to make sure that this goes to our neighborhoods. This is a very, very unique time here in the city of Tampa. And if we don't capture that lightning in a bottle at this time, then shame on us, because I think it's something where we can really, and it's something that I'm excited about, that we can really take this city, the city that I grew up in, the city that my father came to in 1960 when he left Cuba at the age of 16, that we can really take it to that next step. It's something I'm excited about. It's something that your leadership and your members I know are excited about, and it's something that I hope to work on in the next 4 years. Great.
Louis, if the viewers and our members wanted to learn more about your campaign, your platform, where can they go?
That's a good question. On Facebook or Twitter, if you just look up Louis Viera, you'll find it there. And I'm pretty active on social media whenever I'm not sick.
All right, great. Well, on behalf of our 1,400 members, our board of directors, thanks for joining us, and thanks
Yes, sir.
to continue to serve in an elected capacity. We really appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Hope you have a great day.
Thanks.
Thank you.